Oh dear. Testing. I have to say something interesting. It looks like they're clipping. Oh yeah, no, no, it's better. I'm gonna start up my backup recording. I'm doing okay. I mean, I feel like 2023 was the year everyone decided AI was going to happen. But I'm a little depressed. I'm a little depressed to find out the new Gemini demo videos were all fake. So that makes me sad in my heart. Um, uh, but yeah, no, I think it's been a good year. It's been a good year. I feel like we're stabilizing after the whole 2020 stuff. Just say that. We'll leave it there. So yeah. So I think it's good, but I'm curious what's going to happen with the job market. It's everyone's a little nervous. So hopefully things are up. Crypto's ripping again, so I'm starting to hear people get excited, which is excited to see people excited about something. So AI and crypto being exciting again could be cool. So I saw that there are upcoming two SpaceX launches scheduled for this evening as we're recording this podcast, which is December 11th. So I think that's pretty cool from like two launch pads very near to each other in Cape Canaveral. So um, yeah, space is becoming big again. That's cool. If I can bother myself to go look outside, yes. And it's not too cloudy. I'm far enough away where yeah, it's often obscured by clouds. Yeah, I don't know. I listened to actually some economists talk about it, which was different than hearing software engineers talk about it. Because software engineers are obviously colored by uh, personal vested interest, let's say, because it's highly personal. So I heard some economists talk to about it, and they were sort of saying that if you look at the rate that it was before and the rate it's going to be now, and like where it's settling out, and sort of like barring some sort of drastic change, that it is just going to be a much, much larger portion of people spend more time working from home, whether that's, fully from home or part of the week at home. They're like the sort of cat's out of the bag. Everyone already figured out that it is okay and it does work. So there will probably be, it's a gradient. There'll probably be hybrid work for the foreseeable future, but they were kind of indicating that they believe it's here to stay. If nothing else, it's a competitive advantage for companies that don't do a fully in office thing to recruit sort of like key talent. And so um, hearing someone outside the field say that, and they were also talking about sort of implications for like just how much gas is consumed by people commuting or not, and office space. And we forget, it's the classic traffic waves thing. If you've ever seen that, it actually doesn't take sort of a lot of change to sometimes swing wildly supply chains or bandwidth, or insert your favorite example here. And so sometimes actually only a 10% decrease in the demand for like commercial real estate, as an example, leads to mass vacancies, just because people find new and creative ways or do something different or go with the barely manageable office. And so I think we've not fully seen the impacts of those things yet, because those leases are often long. And so we'll see. Ooh. Yeah, I actually, VR is a good one. I think we're talking about predictions. I think 2023 VR wasn't a thing for me yet, but I have hopes for 2024. There are some key things. The new Oculus coming late in the year, and okay, well, I guess I'll save it for 2024 predictions. But yeah, that's a great point. I guess the thing I hear about remote work is that I think resonates is, depending on the kind of personality you have, depending on where you are in your career, and depending on like the nature of your tasking, makes a very large impact. And the thing is, those things are not constant over your career, and they're not constant even throughout the year. And so uh, I think that people say this, oh, it's very difficult to innovate, in far flung places. But I don't know. I think it requires, like you said, careful planning, and I'm not clear that everyone thrived under spontaneous, interruption and let's sit down and talk about this. And we had this come up on my team recently. We were trying to, let's call it innovate, not just turn the crank on some stuff. We were trying to like figure out some new stuff. And we made a point to say, like, yeah, we're going to do this on Thursday. I think it was on Monday. And then, Tuesday and Wednesday, when we briefly met together, we sort of added things for people to kind of think about, and sort of like not go prepare slides for, but just when we came together on Thursday or whatever, be ready to sort of think these are the sets of things. And it was actually really interesting, because rather than making it halfway through the brainstorming session and someone going, oh, what about this? We kind of had a notional like set of things we needed to make sure we handled and discussed. Now, wasn't necessarily completely effective, but at least, I found it. Yes, it took a little bit more thought, but it was okay. Is it like mind mapping? Oh. Did you get on the portable gaming PC rage this year? I feel like that was another thing this year. Did you get any portable gaming device? Oh, I will say for the couple like long haul flights I took this year, if you're willing to pack the Steam Deck, oh, it's so nice. It's just like because I don't get a ton of time to just sit, and then I had 3, 4, 5, 6 hours to just sit and like play video games. As long as if you didn't kill your battery or you had a charging strategy. But that's just such a game changer for me. Yes, first world problems that you have to sit for 6 hours with nothing to do, but it was really awesome. But there's other alternatives too now coming out depending on like what set of games you do. I mean, I personally like this. Yeah, and there's some sort of like other second tier companies making them too. There's a bunch, but yeah, the Steam Deck obviously I think has like most people have. Well, I shouldn't say many people have a Steam library that's just like a huge backlog, and there's just like tight integration with that. I don't know, the ease of it, right? Just sitting down and playing it, and the user base is there. And for games that have a bad key mapping, there's always like a user submitted key mapping ranked by popularity, and you can just switch over to someone else's. And yeah, that's very nice. I I will. I played for once. I'm on the ball this time. I saw it and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool." So I have kids that are, I guess, upper elementary, early middle school. So I told them, and they were like, "No, that's dumb." They were like, "Oh, we just want to play real Fortnite." And I was like, "No, no, no, let's play. Like, this is gonna be great." So we started up, and my daughter and I did play a bunch of the Lego Fortnite. I will say, for being just a blatant ripoff of Minecraft, but like in Fortnite world, I really enjoy. It was like a nice fresh take on not exactly the voxel, not exactly Minecraft, but in my opinion, maybe I'm biased. That's clearly where they're trying to go. Minecraft is such a juggernaut, and I think that they want a piece of that action. But I really enjoyed it. The game it had that cycle where you just always like ready to go play, do the next thing, like get one more little step up. They had it very well polished. Aw. Yep. Uh, uh, yeah. I mean, another game that I got on just recently that I've been enjoying the like pick up put down is Dave the Diver. Have you heard about Dave the Diver? Okay. It's such a goofy like mechanic, but it's just sort of like a job simulator kind of game. But you have like and you rotate through various, sort of like parts of your day in the life of a slightly overweight diver by day and working at a sushi bar by night. And so during the day, you need to dive into the ocean and capture fish. And then at night, you work with your sushi chef to make the proper dishes from the food that you caught, and serve patrons that come in. And so it's basically a series of mini games, right? So diving is its own mini game with a set of trade-offs, and then the sushi at night, there's you need to bus, the sushi chef makes the dish, you got to take it to the person who wants the dish, and then you got to like clean the table, grind up the wasabi, serve tea. There's like various little things you need to do. So but it has that really nice like repetition rate where you don't need to sit down and play for 8 hours or 2 hours or 1 hour. You can play for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and do one dive or do one night at the sushi bar. And it's not super pressing you that like you're gonna be hungry if you don't go get apples, or you're gonna like if you so far as I can tell, there's very low repercussions for screwing up, which allows you to sort of like experiment and try and do different things. So I've really been enjoying Dave the Diver on my Steam Deck, actually. What? Okay. Uh, Oh, that's awesome. I saw for Dyson Sphere program, which I feel had a pretty good cut at that mechanic as well. They're adding sort of enemies, and you have to kind of start your world over. But I also learned that apparently, which I don't know, I guess it goes into the economics of game design, but they have a thing where when you're building up your world, they do a sort of weighted average, but recording of your peak science output in a given save. So if you're making, I don't even remember the blue cubes at a certain rate, not the total you produce. You can't just let the game sit there and run, but like how many cubes per second you reached at your peak gives you these like metadata points. And then you can use those points in the future as like expenditure, almost like a roguelike, to sort of skip ahead in your research in your new save. Or they're going to add, I guess, permadeath or death. And so you can spend these metadata credits to like restore it. So it's this really interesting dynamic where you should continue building up your worlds to like have this really massive focus on certain science production, because then later you'll be able to use those as like a sort of shortcut for future gaming. So I thought that was really interesting. Yes. Can you tell people what that is? I've always said V, but I don't know if that's correct. Yeah, yeah, no, no. I think you have it right. I guess like to put terms on it. So RISC V is a ISA, an instruction set architecture. So you're right. The two big ones are ARM and x86. But x86 is sort of notoriously like very complicated and really implemented by Intel and AMD are the only two people who really make x86 chips. x86 being that instruction set architecture, the bytecode that maps to specific operations. And so then there's ARM, and many people license ARM to have their own implementations, though. So you ARM, different than x86, has a lot of, or at least in my opinion, has like a lot of modularity to it. So you can add, extra things like if you're building a digital signal processor, a DSP, you may add a lot of multiply accumulates, which are useful for like IIR, FIR filters, versus if you're not, you don't include that one. So it is more, modular, but you pay licensing fees to ARM for, basically the instructions on like how to do all that and like what, buying existing blocks to drop into an FPGA or to your design for an ASIC. And so RISC-V is supposed to be, yeah, more collaborative and unencumbered by the licensing you need to do. And so lots of people hopefully will build these modules out, and then sort of manufacturers who are trying to compete very, very, very cheaply won't have to sort of invent their own instruction set, which, like you said, allows for better compiler optimization and targeting it, and some portability in many cases. And so, you get sort of economies of scale you wouldn't otherwise. But a lot of these chip manufacturers are trying to start up and kind of gain momentum by being in this ecosystem. So for things like a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino or whatever, they could use this and not have to pay, licensing fees to, which would be part, even if you buy a chip off the shelf, the already pay, like part of the price you pay for it would be the licensing fee to ARM in a lot of cases if it's ARM based, which is very common for embedded chips. And so yeah, so interesting prediction that'll take off. It's been a slow burn growth, and we have started to see uh, some more production outputs from folks for those chips. So that's a good prediction. So, I was going to press you on yours first. Hang on, I was going to make you get a little bit more bold here. So you said VR for work. That was one of your predictions. So I was going to push you on, say, what do you think that's going to look like? That was a little hand wavy. So we wanted some like, got to hold you to it next year. Not multi monitors, not like having 9 monitors spread out like a stock trader in your VR. I was gonna push you on which headset you thought, but okay. So sounds like you're talking about Oculus headset. So for next year, yep. So I was gonna say next year there's rumors that there will be a new Valve Index. There's the Apple Vision Pro rumored to come or said to come next year. So I didn't know where you were going with this, but okay. No, next year. Okay. Okay. And then you talked about lowering AI training costs, improved efficiency. So not just adding more and more parameters to your models, but focusing on getting more bang for your buck and being able to train quicker, iterate. Is that the call there? Oh. All right. And then you had risk V, but I don't know how to get you to make a bold claim there. We have a benefit of live chat. We're getting feedback that it's risk five, and Wikipedia agrees it's risk five. So oh, in the general room. So we'll use AI to go back and auto edit all of this, so we're not grading on everyone. All right, so I guess like first I'll make some AI ones. I think next year we're gonna see someone claim to have gotten AGI, and it's gonna unleash like a little bit of a debate about what does that actually mean. Like what is I think some people feel that means like sentience, like oh, it has some ongoing consciousness and like continuity to itself. Where right now we have like a look back where, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I might be misunderstanding. But today, like you talk to Chat GPT, it can only remember a certain number of tokens before basically the tokens start falling off the back. So AGI at some level will be it's able to recall indefinitely and sort of shape itself going forward over time and sort of build on it. But I don't know. I think someone's going to claim that it just has to be expert enough across enough domains. And so it's creative and it's doing this. We've reached AGI. So someone's going to claim it because I feel there's a lot of political zeitgeist in sort of like, just saying it. And we're going to have the debate. We saw Google put out some guidelines on what they think qualifies as AGI or not as a trying to get in and shape and define it. But I think that'll be sort of one thing. I think another thing we'll see is uh, a lot of people focus on this like code writing, code suggestion. But I'm actually, I don't know, whatever. Maybe I'm short sighted. I think it will come eventually. I actually think what will be more impactful, and I'm gonna make a bet that someone will come out with this next year. Is you see a lot in summarization, and so I think having something like when you do a GitHub pull request or whatever, that having something that comes in and does basically like expert level suggester peer reviewer. So we always talk on this program or on this podcast how difficult and the responsibility of everyone to doing a not super high latency peer review. But what if your first peer review was sort of just like from an AI suggesting, hey, not just in your review, but actually across your entire code base. I've looked at it, done some sort of summarization, and said, hey, it looks like you're duplicating a lot of code from this other module over here. Have you, looked at just using that one instead, or making it more extensible or flex? I think that'd be super cool. I think someone's working on it. They're just not talking about it yet. Well, to be clear, I don't actually know that. And then my final sort of AI one is I think we're going to see video generation, but for memes. So everyone's sort of focused on this like deep fake. And, I think that's happening in the high production value. But I think someone's going to find the right, TikTokable. Uh, okay, but I don't know how you say that. Anyway, like the right, sort of easy, everyone can just like go make the goofy videos. They were a rage for a while. I think it was like Korea or something where they would do the like news reports with the little like avatars marching around. But like imagine that, but like you just type in the scene, whatever, and I want to make a joke like this, and someone's delivering the punchline for you as like a cartoon character, something like that, something that is within striking distance of today, but it hits like a nerve of like it's funny, it's not like creepy, it's kind of obviously fake, but it's still pretty funny. No. Oh. Oh no. Sure. Nice. Uh, yeah, yeah. So from what I kind of like gather, I've not gone and tried them yet. I think there's a bunch that are fairly close, but I've seen some really, really awesome ones, but they require you to still like start with a good template, like a Blender, sort of render. And it doesn't have to be super precise or sort of drawing and getting there. So I think my understanding is part of it is the sort of continuity. So like if you wanted to make a scene, right, from like a movie or even for memes, like you need characters that you can sort of cut away and cut back to, and like they're not just some new complete random, right? So how do you sort of like give that guidance and have the AI sort of keep, we talked about that sort of look back. It needs the continuity across the entire, clip, that it sort of knows all the moving pieces, whether they're on screen or off. And so I think images are kind of already, I don't want to say like already there, but you can go in and you can get like, if you see the pictures coming out now of people, there's always that. I still see this. Oh, you can tell it's AI. You can tell it's not AI because the person has 5 fingers on each hand. And I'm like, oh, I feel like that's so dated. Yeah, yeah, like all that stuff is so fixed. It's really ambiguous at this point when you get a picture, especially because it's blended. If you look at like Photoshop, in the public app now has, you draw a little lasso and type in what you want and it'll put it in there. So it becomes this very difficult, like, what's real versus fake, I think. uh, a long time ago. Is it updated? Do they keep adding new versions, like, based on the latest stuff? Okay. uh, There was, I'm not big on like YouTuber personality people, but I think I'm gonna try going. I think it's Peter McKinnon had he's like a, famous for doing photography stuff. Anyways, he had a video where the users submitted uh using kind of this Photoshop tool where they either extended the background or they started with a picture, but then they edited it in some way, like inserting a shed, inserting a bison, like whatever. So they would give him a picture, and people would send them in. He wouldn't see him before, and he would get, I forget, some number of seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds to look at the picture on his computer and figure out which parts were fake and which parts were real. And of course, he's a, like, if he zoomed in and really thought about it or he knew the location, he would probably know. But in general, he had a really hard time because you just don't know. It was like, oh, these entire mountains and this beautiful rocky, landscape or Swiss Alps, it's just completely fake. It was actually just somebody's backyard. And so it's really difficult at the level these tools are getting when you start to blend between them. And I think, for first glance stuff, again, that sort of Instagram, TikTok, whatever, just passing by how much content you consume, a lot of that's going to become sort of the quote unquote airbrushed. It's going to become augmented in this way. But I think the next step is where you don't even need, like you said, the background, right? You don't even need that. It's just going to be completely end to end. I feel like that's so at hand. It's not a bold move to guess images, which is why I went video. I think video is still not there yet. It's very difficult to get stable. Looks like it was shot in a video camera. I was really rambling. I'll, yeah, code peer reviewer. Okay. Oh, good call. Sure, I'll do. I think I had one more, but I probably already forgot it. And I think the third one I'll make is space. I always like to make a space prediction because I'm bullish. I think there's a big unlock that can happen if we can get to space really cheap, like lots of mass to orbit. And I feel there's a lot of different, sort of companies working in this space now. A lot of them have really cool technologies. A lot of them did demos of pieces of their systems this year, not just SpaceX with their stuff that they're testing out, in Texas, but also the, what is that, spin launch, and the people who are, just building various like stage one or stage two components. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff. So I think next year we're going to see people reaching orbit with a lot of these test platforms, and sort of start a new space race, because if you can get things up there and you can get fuel up and refuel, all of a sudden, I mean, they talk about that, like bringing one asteroid back. I don't think we'll see an asteroid come back, for the next 10 years, but you start to get to where a lot of interesting things become possible if it's super cheap to get things into orbit and vice versa, get things from orbit down onto Earth. I think a lot of stuff we talk about, one of the problems for electric vehicles is a lot of the materials that go into them are scarce or ecologically impactful to mine. But if it's really easy to get things up into orbit and asteroids into orbit, or things out to asteroids to mine them, it could be pretty straightforward to. It's probably much more ecological to sort of bring down a cargo box, I don't know how you say that, of lithium than it is to mine lithium out of the earth. And so also, you can have extending. I don't know if the lithium is in. Someone's going to fact check me. I don't know if that was a good one to pick. But a lot of these metals that are in asteroids and stuff, I think, become accessible, and so I think that's why I'm bullish on it overall. But I think next year we're going to see a lot of the, uh, you know, people building these sort of test platforms, and I think there's probably a lot in stealth mode, because if we can see all these that are out in public, I think there's a lot more that are keeping their sort of head to the ground and just focused on working. But once they start launching, they can't really keep that secret anymore, or lest they look like some sort of weapon. So I think they have to become public. So I think we're going to see a lot more stealth uncoverings. Again, I don't know any secret details there, but I think getting to orbit for a lot of these startups is going to be a thing for next year. Yeah, we'll go with that. Giveaway? I can't fact check you. Very nice. Oh man, I'm taken off guard because I that's not where I thought the question was going. So I was prepping myself for. Okay. Uh, I Yeah, go ahead. All right. Thank you for buying me time. No, that was a good answer. I guess like not to cop out. I don't think there's a singular correct answer. I mentioned this before, but I think same thing applies here. This isn't something that is you set a dial between the two soft skills and sort of programming skills and you leave it there. That is definitely the wrong answer, regardless of where you set the dial. And I think depending on where you are in your career, what situation calls for, but okay, specifically at a FANG company, I will say, I'll give that caveat first, having been at two of the letters in the FANG company. I uh, uh, Jason can one up me there, but that's fine. I will say that soft skills are often in short supply. And so having them can make you a critical team member. But when it comes time for promotion, you're being able to point to specific innovative pieces of code or integrations that you did, they're much more defensible. It is very hard for your manager, your director to go to another director or manager and say, this person is such a collaborator. They are such a, ability to just find the right problem to like those things are all true and they're all necessary. And they help you get the results and the leverage. So you really have to be clutch at them. But if they come at the cost of being able to point to, like, you're helping everyone else do their amazing coding, you're very high risk of having all those people you help get promoted before you do. So, in a purely selfish, not best thing for the project. Now, helping the project succeed is ultimately good for you, but like, I think I've suffered from this before, doing exactly these things, running around, helping people, doing integrations, making sure, and then myself not being able to point to specific code contributions has hurt me at FANG companies. So that probably has different dynamics on different teams and maybe even different of the letters in the company, but and at a startup. But in those companies, I will say you have to be cognizant that you have to get the right work at the right time, which is a soft skill, but being able to execute and write that code that everyone agrees is chef's kiss, right? That it doesn't have to be a lot of code. It has to be, you have to point to specific code that no one else was writing, that you were writing. That's the way to sort of light the engine on the rocket ship. And so playing that balance, the fiddle of moving between soft skill, hard skill, soft skill, hard skill, filling your pipe, I think that's a skill in itself. And it is really hard because you never know the right answer, and not even in retrospect do you really learn whether or not you had the dial set correctly. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it's an easy question, which is like, maybe it already has, or next year. Um, and I think there's a couple of like human factors things that just go into that, which is in a relative performance, metric, each new OpenAI release isn't it can be the same sort of like absolute improvement, but on a relative basis, that goes down, right? And so the leap from GPT-2 to GPT-3, whatever, it it feels so much more powerful because it just seems so much cooler. But over time, each one of those increments, you have to actually to get the same percentage increase, your absolute increase has to be significantly more. And they've already said, hey, listen, like we've reached the end of parameter scaling. Who knows how much truth or PR there is to that. But I think we're seeing that, which is we're not seeing the leap forward already doesn't feel as big. That said, I think normalizing this out, you kind of mentioned for search purposes, Jason, like being able to even going from I'll call it pre Google search engines where they literally were doing like fuzzy string matching. I mean, I know there were others, to being able to give just something vaguely in line with your question and get back answer, at least, the next step, to writing it even worse. I was asking, OpenAI, ChatGPT, a question about some computer science problem, and I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know the right search terms to put into Google, so I just like explained it, the nature of the problem. It failed me, but it did give me a bunch of like relevant things that matched what I was saying. Whereas I wouldn't have been able to put like, I have a graph and I'm trying to like count the number of neighbors of this or that in this particular way. Google would have just matched like count number of neighbors in a graph or something, right? And give me some algorithm for adjacency matrix, counting. Anyways, so I think it's already here, but I think the hype is already like people have the attention span of a gnat. I don't know. Like I feel like the hype is already dead. So now it's just a bunch of people are going to get to work integrating the current capabilities. The question, like you said, if you go back to previous AI booms, they never really manifested in being used in everyday life in a super meaningful way. The question is whether the current batch, given 12, 18, 24 months, are they going to be like a new industrial revolution or not, right? And sure, maybe there will continue to be hype cycles after that, but will they actually affect meaningful change? I think it's yet to be seen. Sorry, that was part one. All right, go ahead. AI, Patrick. Like they run the embedding and then they pull it back out again. Oh. Oh, okay. Well, that I was partly joking. I think like the realization we actually did change the show this year, so I think trying Jason and I are pretty busy, so I think we've gone to a little bit of a different format, and yeah, I actually think this is I'll say more sustainable long term for us. So I I'm happy with this, and it's been going a long time. I listen to other podcasts and they say, oh, this is our eighth year or ninth year, and I'm like, wow, they've been going a long time. Now, wait a minute, hey, wait, like we got longer than that, but I kind of doesn't like it's not real to me. I don't know. It's very strange. I have a very strange relationship with this podcast, I guess. It's internal pressure. Yeah. Are we doing another giveaway? Nice. Nice. I have a small segue before we go into another question. Something that we haven't talked about but has been really interesting is 3D printers. So we've talked briefly about 3D printers in the past. I think 3D printers are also sort of like coming into their own this year. So uh, I didn't have a bold prediction about it, but I'm excited to see sort of what's going to happen with the quality and amount. Do you have a 3D printer, Jason? Nice, nice. I think I'm gonna save it up for another episode to talk about. But I think I'll call it a Gen 3. So I had a Gen, not a Gen 0, like a rep, like a do everything yourself from scratch. But I got on at Gen 1, I'll call it, which was like you procured 2020 aluminum extrusion and you like screwed stuff together and it's just like a kit. Um, I'll say that personal, I call that Gen 1. Then Gen 2 was like the Ender. I had an Ender. Yeah, it was great, great. I'll say I think it's a clear Gen 3. I got a Bamboo X1C. And yeah, we'll talk about it in a future episode, but it is fundamentally a different interaction than Gen 1 and 2. And I've printed so many things. I've had exactly one issue once, and I haven't like touched it, like screwed anything, done any. It's dude, it's crazy. So I think this is the unlock, and so it's just going to ripple out. I think people have been a little burned, so it's going to take a little time. But I think, yeah, I think there's a revolution brewing. Okay, I am so intrigued. See. I don't go on X. I don't go on Twitter that much. But when I do, I have some people who have been doing this, and it blows my mind. I like literally don't understand it at all. Except I know how like traditional photogrammetry works in theory, right? Like taking pictures, matching features. Jason and I have talked about this before. We used to do some work in this field prior, so like I understand like matching features from thing to thing, understanding parallax, like estimating pose. So, like a traditional pipeline for building that stuff, I understand. When I watch the nerfs and Gaussian splatting, I don't understand. Like, I just see the things like thin wires and strings that traditionally would have been impossible to do via other mechanisms. They just would have screwed up. And I see them work, and it just like they blow my mind away. But I haven't done the deep dive to figure out what they're actually doing. Okay, all right, I'm excited. All right. See, we already passed our prediction thing. It has to be like a 2025. They can't. No one do this this year. We got to predict it for 2025. That was easy. Machine opcodes. You should have memorized an ISA assembly set for yeah, at least three or four different Yeah, if I had to like add one thing, I agree with you. A lot of people would say like hash map or something, which is definitely also like a good one when you start going up in size. But if I had to add like something to the data structures and algorithms and a sort of way of thinking and decomposing things, I would add string manipulation. It doesn't have to be like regexes, but just like being able to like, and maybe it comes from doing programming competitions. I don't know, but like so many times I see just folks struggle like I have a string. I don't know how to get the thing I want out of the string. And it's just like, no, be comfortable and sort of like, it could be crappy. It could be like non efficient. It doesn't matter. Just know how to like, I have a string. The string isn't what I want. I want some piece of it or some recombination of it. And that requires, of course, like arrays, because mostly we treat strings as arrays of characters. Uh, it requires looping. It requires arrays of arrays and being comfortable in that. But like just really be comfortable like taking a string, chopping it up, and getting the pieces you want out of it. Is They don't really teach that in data structure now. They teach things you would need for doing it, but that specific like additional one is just like very, very common. Oh, and debugging. No, no. Oh, you're nice. I thought you were going to name something esoteric. COBOL. Oh, do the chopper. Was it Arnold Schwarzenegger language? Oh, I wasn't thinking that would do, but yes, you mentioned that was good. Performance analysis as well. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Oh man, the list is growing. All the things you need to know. I'll go Sure. Sure, I'll go first. I mean, I guess so. Part of this, is very person to person dependent. So, if you're a religious person, that could give you, I'll say, like externally, like a way of grounding yourself. And so, for me, that's definitely like a part of it. But just in general, I would say, leaving that aside, that you kind of have to pick, in my opinion, and decide what is work going to define like who you are, or are you going to have like a definition of who you are and like you work to kind of achieve it, I guess, like hand wave without getting into having thought too deeply about it. And I think that both kinds are okay. And I'll give an example, which is I routinely have career conversations with people. I've talked to people over the years, managers. There are some people who will say, uh, I never want to work on an ad system. Ads are bad, and I don't want to work on, anything that has to do with serving ads, building ads, like, just and you can insert any, topic here. Um, Other people might say, I don't have a specific moral like problem with ads. So as long as if the technology I'm working on and I'm learning something and I'm engaged and I have a good team, these things are more important. I think this is a slice of that same problem, which is, do you go to work and you spend a lot of time with the people there and on those topics, so it is perfectly fine to want those to align very closely with your internal beliefs. But I think it is also okay to say you have a very strong external stuff. People, you might call that work life balance, you might call it whatever, but you have very strong external, you have a family, whether that's your own, spouse and children, or whether it's your parents or your brothers, like it doesn't matter, or friend group, and you're really, focused a hobby outside of work, and work as a way to like make money and like, provide good insurance and support your life. I think both are okay, and being understanding that there are people who turn that dial between those two. And again, right, the hobby horse. Yeah, I don't think it's static over time. I think various times people can have that knob turn back and forth. So I don't know that there's advice you can give people. I think it's a decision you should make, and be thoughtful about like what is the reason that you work, and why do you work, and why do you work where you work, and you should reevaluate it from time to time, and maybe come to the realization that it should switch. And for some people, I will say it becomes a bit of a stumbling block if you allow it always to be turned to work defines me, then it becomes very difficult to switch jobs, because you're almost like switching identities. And I will just say, I guess I'll say, at least in Western society, in our current, capitalistic, whatever you think about that, allowing work to have that control over you is something that doesn't lead you to a game theoretic optimum, right? Like you are going to end up being probably underpaid, underthink, if you allow work to have a sort of hold over you that you have to do that. Maybe if you go run a startup and your own founder, and that is, I'll leave that aside. I can't sort of speak to that. I've never done it, but that may be a way out. But otherwise, if you're working at sort of like a medium or big company, and that's a dangerous place in the dial to be for too long, which is I allow this work to be who I am. So that would be my only caution there. But otherwise, I think it's something that individuals all will, and you will work on a team where everyone on that team defines that differently. Mm. The lottery. Yeah, I mean, you made some good points there. I think, like, for me, I guess, like, if I iterate on what you're saying too, is I think people get a little hung up about setting specific goalposts that they want to, like, it's like very, very, like, if you think about all the design space of everywhere you can be, family, marriage, whatever, they set very specific goals. Like, I have to be married and I want to be married by this age. And I want, like, people set very specific things and work related as well. For me, it's about, like, and I think you're sort of alluding to that, Jason, is like each day, each month, each year, like trying to just have that compounding growth. So for where I am right now, given the extent of my abilities, like being honest about that and saying if I want to grow, it's not just like go take a supplement or go, take a course. It's like I need to start spending a little bit more time each week and not trying to have these like step function changes, but just slowly move the, heading of my vector through the space and realize that farther away, items are going to have a bigger cone of uncertainty. And what I want today for me in 5 years is very different than what I will probably end up being in 5 years. But I want to look back like that, like look back and say, oh, I'm still happy that like this is a good spot to have been in, and be realizing your circumstances and what is and isn't in your control. But personally, I've never resonated with this like you have to have a 5 year goal and be pushing with it, or where are you going to end up? Maybe it's a maybe for some people that is actually a strict necessity, but I've found for myself it's like I've never really had a like goal other than to be somewhat better than I am today, like being more and having grown and across like all the things in 5 years without specifically like I need to have done this bucket list or checklist in 5 years or I will be sort of like have missed my goal. Yep. Yeah, I think it's regrets. That got really deep. And now we want to know what they're champions of twice. I was a terrible programmer in college. No, and I'm just kidding. In college, I mean, I used it to like try a lot of different things. So I guess like I don't exactly know how to answer what kind of programmer I was in college, but I definitely wasn't like super sure what I was gonna do when I got out. First job I took was at a defense contractor, but I did it as part of a program where I would get to try a bunch of different projects there over the first few years that I was going to work there. And so that really appealed to me. And also, I was going to get my master's degree at the same time. So for me, coming out of college was like about continuing my education, but also about getting to try a bunch of different things. Cause I feel like it paid off for me, but I've always been of the philosophy like the earlier you in your career, you really want to like, for my personality, it was like really sample as many things as you can, like become good in things. At some point though, it's like, pyramid, you want to have like a good foundation, but as you like go up, you want to like narrow in your focus until you become better and better and better at certain things, but that you have like a good foundation that you've built up on. So yeah, I guess coming out of college, first was at a defense contractor. I enjoyed my time there. I learned a lot. I wasn't ready to go straight into, I mentioned earlier, been at a couple FANG companies, but like I wasn't ready for that right out of college. I needed to mature a little, grow a little, before getting sort of thrown into that. So I appreciated that first job, but there was a time when it was no longer the right job for me, and so I was thankful that I was able to rotate out of that. I think four. Yeah, I think it was just shy of five. I think it was like four and some change. Oh no! Yeah, I mean, I'll drop right here, and then we'll probably have to go into lightning round for the rest of these questions. But also, I don't think Jason, no offense to him or myself, but neither of us came from sort of target schools for big tech companies. So, like, not that they don't recruit there, but like, we didn't come from schools that, traditionally you see as people going there. And so I'll say the same thing. People get really, really like worried about exactly what college they go to, exactly what first job they have. I think it's just about building up your character and your skills and your abilities. And it might take time, and it can be harder or easier based on certain decisions, but like, I guess, like Jason said, I think it's a fairly robust kind of thing, for the most part. And so, but again, it's about being that like realistic about where you are and where you want to be, and do you need to grow. And so some people have a sort of outsized view. You got to be humble but practical. Like, don't err too far on either side. Don't underestimate your skills and don't overestimate them either. You have to be realistic about where you are and where you want to be. Whoa. All right, I'll read the next question here, Jason, which is, people, like, a lot of people already specialize. Oh, I think I already answered this. Uh-oh. People already specialize, at least knowing what path they want to be on, whether it's AI, security, DevOps, data engineering, web dev. I'm an early career backend software engineer, and I get to play a little bit with almost everything. And that's what I like about it. But from a career perspective, should I be thinking more about specializing? Is specialize even real, or is it just like a title? And this is from Cup of Geo. Yeah, I think for a slightly different tech, but I already, kind of mentioned it. I actually don't think it's super important to worry about what you want to be when you grow up. I was having this conversation even with my kids. Like, I don't really know what I want to be when I grow up. I mean, my current specialty as a software engineer is like, or I guess what I've been working on the last many years is completely something I didn't really necessarily knew existed. It's not something I would have been working on. It's uh, in a field supporting things that I didn't like, probably weren't even an option when I was in college. And so I think that, like, it's very hard to predict some of those things. And I started out doing, we talked about a defense contractor, doing like low level embedded programming, doing multi-year government maintenance contracts, like really weird stuff. And then I, went to Fang Company and did, giant, large scale distributed MapReduce projects. And, I've done everything in between. And I've sort of taken the tack that like I want to always be learning new things and figuring out how stuff works. And there are, I think, places in the space that you can learn stuff that's just too niche, or like it's sort of the expected value of that sort of niche skill is low. So it may have really high payout, but very low probability of that payout. And you can gamble on those things. If you look back, there are things I don't want to. Oh, I don't want to attack anyone. There are technologies we've even named so far which could be considered like big gambles with potentially big payouts. But they're just that. And you may like that. That may be exciting. Or you may say, which has kind of been more my tack, is take things which are interesting to me but are somewhat stable or adjacent, or skills that will sort of go along with me. And that has served me well. So I feel that there's a lot of can be a lot of peer pressure, and a lot of people just know or think that they know, and they might be wrong. But there are a lot of people who think that they know, and just don't feel that pressure. Like do stuff that you like. And you know for me, it's about, and Jason kind of mentioned those things about regrets. Don't I try to look at the upside. There's always been something to learn from all the things I've done. Some stuff has been truly terrible and maybe less learned, but I'm still thankful that I did those things, and make sure that I know how to like not do them again, or how could I maybe have avoided that. Right? There's always sort of lessons to be learned. So, I mean, I think first 10 years, I think you don't really have to pick a specialist. I don't know you ever do, but I would also say there is a danger in sort of on a given project, like, saying that I just will do anything. I don't want to do any one thing. And, every job I take must be different. And sort of being a Renaissance person uh, can be a little dangerous as you want to get promoted further and further. So I think there's about, there's different ways of playing that game, and sort of having enough attention spans so that you really learn something, but then realizing that you can have that time slicing over time is probably better and more stable than sort of going into a project and saying I want to do a little bit of everything here, and sort of forcing yourself to be super spread thin. Doesn't allow you to learn in depth any one thing. And so I would say learn things deeply sequentially rather than spread yourself too thin. I was going to go Egyptian hieroglyphics before I realized that it meant a programming language, not a foreign. No, I don't really, we joke a lot about, but I've never really sat down and tried to program in many esoteric languages. Probably some assembly language. It's interesting the difference between CISC and RISC architectures in assembly. So I did some programming in Motorola 68K assembly, which is CISC, so complex instruction sets, and I actually kind of like that. I guess I don't know if that's considered esoteric. I might offend some people by saying it is, but I feel like that was a pretty cool opportunity. So for a non-mainstream language for today, I think that would be my pick. Thank you, Jason, and thank you for the compliments. Thank you for all the listeners out there as we beam this across. If you're an alien listening, No, just no, I could anyways. No, all right. No, it's been great. It's another good year, and so yeah, I'm happy. I'm thankful for lots of things. But thank you, Jason. Thank you for sticking with this, and yeah, all the work you do as well. Thank you to everyone in the Discord.